Thank you, thank you. It wasn't that a great team? Woo! Man. Wait, we're going to be talking about kids. I love children. How many of you are parents? You're already a professional children's worker. You already got the scar tissue. You know what I mean. Isn't it awesome? They're so much fun. And they're not a challenge at all. Okay, maybe a little. We're going to end up talking about what we do in children's ministry and youth ministry. We're just kind of giving a broad stroke, but we're going to be thinking about it. And the thing is, the little goofy things that we do, we don't do it by accident. We actually didn't come up with an idea saying, hey, let's look foolish by doing goofy songs. We do it because it's the way kids are developing and growing, and they're really wonderful. I've taken a lot of this from Child Evangelism Fellowship, who happens to be incredibly gifted at working with children around the country, different denominations, different developmental stages. It's kind of fun. And then also I actually teach this at Belhaven College. Is that a hoot? And so I've asked Zach to help me, and we actually double team. So I said, jump on in. And I say the same invitation to Ryan. I say the same thing to you. Like, let's just kind of play together and learn together. Does that sound good to you? I mean, like, speak up. All right. As we get started, I wanted to, anybody know Luke 2:52? Let me go over it with you. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Jesus, isn't that cool? He grew in what ways? Wisdom and stature and favor with God and man. Now, that's kind of cool. All right. So he did wisdom and stature. All right. Wisdom has to do with what? You're right. Knowledge and applying the knowledge. You are amazing. All right. Stature has to do with what? A concrete figure. No. Stature has to do with what?
Reputation.
What?
Reputation?
Reputation? Not quite. Huh? Physical development. That's why she's a part of America Reads. Mind and emotion. Mind and emotion. Physical. They actually grow up. It's amazing. We were talking about this in class. Jesus had to learn to control his bladder. The creator of the universe had to learn to walk. Now that is just mind-boggling. He literally had to do that. He had to learn to swallow. He had to learn to speak. He had to learn to put all that stuff that we do. He had to learn to do all that. How many of you sit down and think about that kind of weird stuff? I mean, if I didn't teach this stuff, I'd just kind of blow that off. But then all of a sudden it says that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. And all of a sudden I'm saying that he had to learn knowledge and learn how to apply it. He literally had to put himself in a situation where he had to learn to control his bladder. That is weird. He was potty trained. Isn't that weird? I want you to be like Jesus. Get on that pot. I mean, you know what? Wisdom, stature, favor with God. Let me ask a question. In the way it's actually written, he's favored by God. Now let me ask a question. What does that have to do with? If you just kind of put it, huh? He grew spiritually. And we see him doing that. At 12 years old, what was he doing? He was teaching with the rabbis. He's talking back and forth to the rabbis. And that's normal. He would be sitting there talking to the rabbis, and they would be asking him questions. By the way, we did that same thing on Wednesday nights and Upside Down, and you call that what?
Catechism.
The catechism. It's a matter of asking questions, kids respond. We ask questions, kids respond. The rabbis would do the same thing. They would ask questions, and the kids would respond. And the kids would ask questions, and the rabbis would respond. And they would dialogue and talk with each other. It's interesting that when they found Jesus at 12 years old, which is manhood for that age and for that culture at that time, It's interesting, he's actually carrying a conversation with rabbis where he's kind of leading the conversation. He was growing in a relationship with his father. He loved his father. And matter of fact, we know he got onto this deal when they come and said, where in the world have you been? I mean, honestly, do you know the story? What were they doing while he was teaching at that time, while he was dialoguing with the rabbis?
Going back home?
They're going back home. They're a few days off. I mean, like a day. Have you ever misplaced your kid for about a minute? I was telling a story. I actually lost our daughter, and what happened was I was watching her at home, and so I do a lot of work with class. So I was working. We made these little bitty squirters. She comes in and says, "Hey, can I go around the block with my friend?" And I know her friend, of course, and I'm sitting there going, the block is right around there. And I said, "Yeah, okay, be careful, stay out of the street, don't get hit by anything." So she goes around. Well, weirdly enough, I should have caught on that it's getting dark because I cut the light on. And it's dark. And then Sherry comes in and says, "Where's Mandy?" And I said, "Oh, she's around the block." She said, "What block?" I'm block. She said, "It's getting dark." And I said, "Whew, time flies when you're having fun or working or losing the child." And so anyway, she found her in another subdivision, sitting on the side of the road crying with her friend. And so she came home and she had a nice, gentle, kind conversation with her husband. I think it went from admonishment to rebuke or something like that. There was some life-threatening statements made. So that's kind of a weird parent fear. They come back to talk to Jesus, and Jesus is saying, what?
Didn't you know?
Then you know what?
How would it be about my father?
Had to be about my Father's business. Isn't that amazing? Spiritually astute, spiritually aware, and favored with man. What does that have to do with it? They actually have a social life. Isn't that something? They're going to develop socially. They're going to learn how to relate to other people. They're going to find that outside world and inside world kind of match, and they kind of find out who they are in context to relationships. So as we kind of run through this real quickly, we're going to see that. Here's some things that have to do with children that children, now it changes as adolescents. Then you have to exercise the demon. But before that, you don't have to. They're immortal souls. These kids there's an eternal situation that they're born into. When they're human beings, they're image bearers of God, and there's an eternal consequence to being made in the image of God. These are immortal souls. In that, wow, eternity immediately is into balance in their kids' lives. It gets real important, doesn't it, for us to work with children and to have them in our world. They're sinners. It was so funny. I have a lot of grandkids, and I have 5 of them at the house now, so they're just all over the place. I went to bed last night and I got a foot in the kidney. I got to bed about 2:30 this morning, and I got in bed and I got a kick in my kidney, and it was a little small foot, so it couldn't have been my wife. She had kicked me in the head, but it was a little bitty foot, and it was our 4-year-old grandson had found his way into bed, so I rolled over going, "Oh," I'm finally, "Hey, yeah, that's good." He's going, Poxy. Okay. But it's interesting. We had our 7-year-old, but when he was about 3 or 4 years old, he was visiting us here at Redeemer. And, like any parent, grandparent, you kind of want to know that your kid didn't set fire to anything important. So Lawson Newman was actually in the nursery at the time. So I said, "Hey, Lawson, how was Hayden?" And he looked at me, and I love Lawson Newman. He goes, "He's a sweet little sinner." You got both parts of his nature. He's a sweet little sinner. Aren't they all? But they're teachable. They learn to love. They love to learn. They are in it. They love it. They absorb it. There's kind of this thing on TV. It's not like an advertisement necessarily, but it's kind of an announcement or something to try to teach you how to be a parent online. So anyway, it's on television, and it's this kid talking, and it says, "Read to me talk to me. Because when you use your words, my brain expands. It's kind of wild, but it basically says, my mind grows when you read to me and teach me. And it talks about the importance of 0 to 5-year-olds and how quickly they absorb things. And so it's important to know that they're teachable. They're great at memorizing, and so when we spend a lot of our time memorizing scripture, they are great at it. That's how they learn. It's repetition, recitation, and report. So you'll hear us do that all the time. Repetition, we'll say it over and over and over again. If you're going to teach a kid memory verses, you try to think about 7 or 8 times. Just about the time you think you're going to lose your brain, that's just not quite enough. So you need to do it 2 or 3 more times. You know, after 5 times you say, certainly, well, get it, I'm started doing it. And then all of a sudden you realize, well, let's do it again. So you repeat it 7 or 8 times in order for them to finally get it once. But they lock and load on this stuff, and it's really beautiful. So we do it by repeating and then reciting. When they repeat it back to us, they're teaching themselves as well as teaching you. But they're going to teach themselves in the process. And report means that they go home and tell somebody. When they go and report, they're actually reteaching and relearning the process. So those are the things that we kind of do. They want to do right. They really want to please the teacher. They want somebody to recognize their value. And that's kind of nice, but they'll drive you crazy with it, but they really honestly want to do right. Now, they're sinners. They're not going to do it right all the time, but they want to. They want to be valued, and they want to please you, so they want to go in the direction you want to send them to. But how many of you have ever started a good thing and never quite gotten it done yet? Anybody have a good project at home you swore you would get it started? We're adults. So put it on a little squirter's level. They'll try their best, and then they'll kind of go offline a little bit, and then they get back in line. But the desire is that they want to do right. They also are readily believe the Bible. Isn't that something that when we tell a kid this is the Bible, what do we usually say? I use my iPad now more than I do. But like in Vacation Bible School, you've seen us do this a lot of times. Sunday school, we'll hold the Bible up and we'll say what? What is this? God's Word. Who wrote it? God did. Then we can believe what? Everything in it. And we tell the kids that at the very beginning of almost every lesson. What is this? This is the Bible. Who wrote it? God did. What can we believe? Everything in it. We keep saying that, and the kids really start to lock and load that that's important stuff in that Bible. That we can believe it, and they readily do so. So when we say it's important, now by the way, they believe other things too. They believe in Santa Claus, and they believe in the Easter Bunny and Tooth Fairy. So you got to be kind of careful what you teach. But kids lock and load. But they really want to. They really readily lock in on the stories of the Bible. They're ready to pray. It's interesting how many of these kids aren't they? How many of your kids pray? Isn't it awesome? And how many of them like get in it? I mean, do they really kind of get into the prayer thing? I mean, it's so fun, and I can tell when my grandkid gets it, because here's what will happen. He'll go like this. He'll be yakking, I'll say, all right, Brad, it's time to pray. He's 4 years old, and he'll go, dear Jesus, I'm not a good brother. And I'm like going, all right, yeah, he's in it. He's in the song. Please. But he loves his mom and daddy. He loves his big brother. He'll just go off on that. He loves his mom team, Popsy, and I throw an extra one in on that one. And he loves Jesus. And I told this story the other day. He was out praying in public. He was at a Piccadilly, and his brother said, why don't you pray, Brett? You go ahead and pray. Because his big brother's now trying to be the big brother. It's about time. But anyway, so he's over here. And so all of a sudden, Brett starts to pray. And he prays, and he says, and I love you, Jesus. Amen. And all these tables around him started, amen. He turned around and he said, you know Jesus? and all these people at these tables around us go, yes. He says, do you love my Jesus? I'm like going, yeah. You've been listening to Popsy. Try things they love to imitate. They're really little bitties, but at the same time, they just like to move. And have you noticed that little bitty things are always acting, doing things? Like every part of their body wiggles at times? Not necessarily coordinated, but it's a part of development. They discover things. Hands, they have discovered their own body parts. They discover jewelry, glasses, eyeballs, and nostrils. Just thinking out loud. I've replaced many a necklace, because it's like, wow. So, self-centered. They're all about figuring out who they are. Notice it's all about their need. They're not going to ask you, Mom, are you feeling okay? You think you can fix me something? Do you feel like nursing me now? Is there anything I can do for you? No, not going to happen. It's all about them, and they're imitators. They learn from you. You smile, what do? They smile. You frown. You say no. How many of you have been taught words that you've said to your daughter or son, and all of a sudden it comes back to you? And then you go like this, who has been talking to my kid? Don't say no to me. Well, you can say no to them all the time. Okay, they imitate. All right, let's look at 4 and 5-year-olds just real quick. Just looking at it. By the way, when you talk about things like this, it really is fun. It means what we're doing is we look at them and say they are learners. And so what we do in our nursery time is a real lesson. We go through lesson plan. We spend time with kids. We want to teach them. We can teach them words. We can read to them. We can read stories and tell stories to them. We can be appreciative of the activities that they're trying to get involved in. About 3-year-olds, they get really serious about. By the way, the terrible twos are not necessarily terrible. It's just that these kids are just soaking in everything around them. They're discovering the universe. So you have to kind of get in groove with that. There's that sense of independence that starts to go. That drives, you know what I mean? Now they're able, the more mobile, that means they can get to more discovery. Does that make sense? They got more channels to surf. They can move around more. And there's that sense of independence. And sometimes it drives us crazy because they put your coat on front. And they're like going, no. Well, part of that is rebellion. The other part is they're really trying to discover, I can do this myself. Have you noticed that? Like shoes go on the wrong feet. It's amazing. Clothes are inside out. Hair looks a little funky on girls. Even little ones. I mean, they do things to themselves and you got to go, oh. Fix that. That's gotta hurt. I mean, 4 and 5-year-olds, they're players, but they're also questioners. Why? 2 + 2 is 4. Why? I taught my kids, my grandkids, I was teaching them early about mathematics. So I sent them home with this mathematical equation. 2 + 2 is chicken. And their father was not excited about that at all. But they got home and asked him, why is 2 + 2 chicken? That's right. And I was sitting there going, yes. He's a PhD, let him figure it out. But they asked lots of questions. They like to play. You can teach them through play. That's what we do. We play with the kids. Our playing has a purpose. It's to teach them because they're listening and asking questions. And by the way, they're asking questions because they're filling their brain with information. So sometimes it might drive us crazy, but what we can do is we spend time answering questions and we talk to them. And as we get down on their level and we actually sit down and start listening to some of the stuff, we can start doing it. And you can even do this incredible thing. What do you think it means? That really drives me crazy. They're asking you, but you say, if you ask it like 500, the 400th time that you respond to the same question, you can actually reverse it because part of it's their play game. It's a learning game that they've got. It drives parents crazy because parents think it's 400 times I've said the same thing. But if you sit down with them for a moment and reverse the process, they get that too. They kind of go like, because what happens is you're sitting there saying to them, well, why do you think that? And then they get it, because then they're going to tell you the truth. Again, repetition, recitation, and report. So they're reciting back to you and reporting back to you what you've already said. By the way, they'll respond to you with the same tone that you respond to them. So you got to be kind of mindful of that as we're working with kids. You know, as they ask questions, I've said that now 3 times. They'll actually report back to you in the same tone. what do you think it does? And they'll say, because, and you're gonna go like, well, that was kind of intense, wasn't it? They're questioners, they're self-centered. They're still trying to figure out their world. And they're more interested in them than they are of you. But this will soon change. Get this, 4 and 5-year-olds can know Jesus. There are many of people who come to faith in Christ at 5 years old. Matter of fact, it's interesting, I was telling somebody in our class the other day that I had a friend of mine who came into one of our staff meetings, and he said to me, he goes, we had good news and bad news. And he says, last night my kid made a decision and surrendered his life. And we're going, oh, that's so exciting. He said, yeah, he asked Moses into his life. So I said, well, glad he's circumcised. I don't know. Heck of a Jewish little fellow you got there. I said, I'm glad you're going to unwind that deal, but he was so excited that he had received Moses as Lord and Savior. So they can make decisions, they can become believers. You just got to direct their steps. But then that's kind of interesting that these kids are primed for the gospel. And they can make real decisions. They can actually discover that they are sinners. And they need Jesus. Isn't that awesome? Let's not pretend for a moment that these children are incapable of knowing Christ. That we're just filling their mind with information, but they really can't do anything with it. Notice what it says about Jesus. He grew in wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge and the ability to apply it. That's what our children are doing. They're growing at a rate where they not only can get information, absorb it, but they begin to apply it. And that's what we want, is cognitive growth. And they learn how to do that through us. 6 to 9-year-olds, and we're going to kind of look on some of this over here. 6 to 9-year-olds are active. They're energetic. Anybody got that? They are like unbelievably loaded up. Where's Jude? I wish Otis were here. I love Otis. Otis took over, he's doing the first and second graders. They had about almost 30 kids in there. 26. They had 26 kids in there, and it was a room for like 15. It was really, they were like on top of each other. No, you get on the top this time. I mean, it was just crowded. And Otis was walking around handing out stuff. I looked in the window, and he was just like doing this like a, traumatized man. When it was over, I came up and I said, Otis, I'm so proud of you being there with all those kids. And he goes, whatever we need to spend some time celebrating elementary teachers. We need to give them awards. We need to recognize them on special days. I mean, he was just like, he said 1 hour and I'm exhausted. They are energetic creatures. They're active. And so we have to build into our program activities to keep them moving. And so as we're doing that, you'll notice that if you go to Upside Down and stuff, you'll see them going from station to station. We did that with Vacation Bible School. We did it with Pioneer Club. We moved them from one activity to another so that their energy can be flowed. We control the atmosphere. In other words, we're digging the ditch for the water to flow. You see, we provide the boundaries, but we know the water's flowing. The tendency is for us to try to dam up the water. And instead, what we're doing is when we have these different events and activities and moving kids around, all we're doing is just letting the water flow in a direction. It's controlled chaos. And they're observers. They watch all things. They learn well. This age, more is caught than taught. They catch what we're doing. That's why, notice what Zach was talking about earlier. We model for them. The way we talk to kids, the way we act towards one another, the way we obey the rules. We take our plates to the garbage and we tell them to take their plates to the garbage. They watch to see if we're going to do that. So they're observers, so we want to watch and be a part of that process. All right, we want to, they're group players. They like to be in teams, especially with their same-sex team. They like to work together. And so we put them in teams to play. They get in groups to do things. You'll be around a table together. Have you noticed that? We kind of sit them together to do an activity, then they move together with the group. They like that. They enjoy the personal contact, but they really appreciate the idea. They like working as a team, and they like playing together. The kids just like to play together. Sheep like to be in the same boat. They're discerners. They're really trying to figure stuff out. Again, they're going to be asking more questions than you can imagine. And that's why we spend time in our groups trying to get a process of helping them think through concepts. And one of the things it says here in physical, in our cognitive development, provide concrete experiences that help them understand middle ground stuff. They're moving to understand abstract ideas. They're trying to figure out some of the stuff that's going on in their lives. So what we're trying to do with these kids is we're trying to get them to think through the process. We're getting them activities where they can talk back to us, that they can connect the dots between the lessons. They'll ask you lots of questions. At this age, man, they can absorb some cool facts. It's weird, but they can tell you some good stuff. And they like to tell you this stuff. So it's a good idea, for example, this is one of the things we send things home with children, so that they can tell their parents. Again, it's that report process where they go home and tell their parents what happened. And when we tell their parents that we're sending stuff home so they can tell their parents are helping us teach their children, and we're helping their parents teach their children. So it's really that kind of process of sending things back so that they can regurgitate the information. But the facts are cool. They love it. Okay, 9 to 12-year-olds. They're preteens. Okay. We're going to look at, real quickly, their growth is again, they're going to be fast-paced, energetic. They like to move. They like to, at this particular age, these kids like to, boys like to do feats of manhood. You know, this is the hero stage where they like to be somebody else. Batman, Spider-Man. How many kids have ever, Spider-Man parties? They love this stuff. And Spider-Man jumps from building to building. Okay, the number one age for kids to go to the emergency room is 3rd graders.
Wow.
They are getting a handle on their major motor skills. Okay, so their major muscle groups, they're getting a better handle on those than their minor, the finer ones. That kind of, they're still working hard on trying to get, so when you graft, by the way, with these kids, 1st grade up to about 4th, 5th grade, their eyes are still funky. If you know, it's called myopia, and so the kids' eyes will get real tired. That's why we put big things up, colors, borders around things. You go into the room. If you go and look at any of our primary age in kindergarten, they've got colors and borders on everything. They do that to help focus children. You sit them closer to the image you want them to see so that their eyes don't tire out as quickly, because their eyes are like looking through like a little tube, and then it starts to expand. So they get eyesore kind of quickly. They get kind of tired. So you move them from one thing to another. At this age, they're growing past that, of course, but now the finer motor skills still kind of make them tired a little bit. So you do a little bit of the craft work, and then you do something else. So you move them over. You can teach again through repetition. Is still the planned thing. We teach them games, but what we do is we put the borders up and we put the words big and colorful so that the kids can see it and they can get involved with it. Does that make sense? Does this sound familiar? We're doing these things because this is where kids are. And so we're having fun developing these type of things. These kids are learners. They will ask lots of good questions. And again, these are the good news. They're asking questions, but now at this age, they're starting to really ask questions that have to go past yes and no's, do's and don'ts. And they're not trying to be rebellious. They're trying to connect the dots. It's interesting that rules come from a higher authority, and rules are very important to these kids. Starting with about age 6, all the way up to through 9, and now into this age, they're locked on it. But 6, 5, and 6-year-olds, they go crazy if the rules change. If you notice that, they will spend most of their energy trying to correct the fact that you didn't treat everybody equally. 5 and 6-year-olds are going, they're like OCD. But you said. I know I said. But I didn't know that lightning was going to blow the tree apart. So we're going inside now. Well, why? You said we could play outside. Good, you're absolutely right. And now let's talk about why we're going inside. Because I love you and I want to protect you. But you changed the rules. If there were 6 people on a team and there's one with 5 teams, you have to put a staff person in the 6th group because there's 5 over here, there's got to be 6 over there. That make sense? But he's too tall, so he has to do something different because you have to modify. And these kids are over here and you're like going, wow, these kids are amazing. They're rule checkers. When they get this age, they're really starting to try to formulate like how does that actually operate and why are you doing that? It's not as they're critical thinkers at this point. So we actually at this particular time, at this particular stage of preteen, we need to begin to really talk whys, as many things as the whys. This is the goal. This is the reason we do what we're doing. And give them an opportunity in small groups to interact with one another, not just us, but interact with one another. That's another key for them. Let's help them interact with one another, and what we do is we coach or set up again the system by which the water flows. We direct their questions, or the answers. Like we would put forth the questions and then let them interchange. We honor the questions that they're asking because they're really trying to learn, but they're learning inside, not just outside. They're, like I've already gone over, the taller, stronger. Guys and girls at this age are whacked. Girls are bigger than the boys are. They can win in games, boo-hoo, and then all of a sudden it whips. I mean, it just changes like that. Kids at this age are checking themselves out against other people, and nobody's the same. Have you noticed that? You've got tall people with long feet. You've got short people that are round, and you've got all kinds of stuff happening in their lives. This is a very weird moment for parents, and this gives you an opportunity as a staff person to love on people. These kids are starting into puberty at 9 years old for girls. Boys are a little later, thank goodness. But they're actually going to have body odor. Parents are not prepared for that. They expect that to happen when they're 21. So there's trauma, and it's an opportunity for you. This is kind of normalized. This is going to be okay. This is going to be just fine. Your child is going to be just fine. This is good. But, this is a good opportunity to teach your child how to bathe. And this is a good way to change their clothes. And they, again, like to be in groups, boys against girls. By the way, boys, and this time competition is dangerous. It's good to have. By the way, competition is not bad. You just need to know that if it's competition, boys are going to get real competitive. It's not that girls don't, but guys just have this tendency to want to inflict the victory. So the tendency is for fights could break out a little bit here. You want to make sure that you tone this thing down, that you have fair play, and that you enjoy the game. But these guys are moving, and these girls, it's a lot of fun at this point to have, but it's usually guys and girls separate. Worshipers. Man, what an opportunity for these kids to really spiritually grow in Jesus. It's a great opportunity for us in small group settings to really set the pace for these kids to grow in their knowledge and in their understanding of who Jesus is. And small groups is an incredible way to do this. It gives them a safe environment for them to talk with other people about what they're thinking and what they're feeling when it comes to God. And it's awesome that we have that in our church in the way that it's built in such diversity, ethnic diversity and social diversity, so that kids that might not have been given the opportunity to dialogue about spiritual things actually have a place that's safe enough with staff who are aware enough so that these kids can bring questions about God that they've never had answered before in their life. And they're bringing it to other people in that group. And it's so cool to hear your kids that in that small group talk about God to other kids. They are becoming the teacher. We need to give them opportunities to do that. We need to give them opportunities to dialogue about spiritual things. And at this age, brilliant opportunity to get in same-sex small groups. And for some of you, you might find a small group could be a disaster. But one of the things that you might do, for example, especially with boys, and I know this is a little uncomfortable, but if you lay down on your stomach with your feet faced out of the circle and you're close into the circle, you'll get much better results. Isn't that kind of crazy? You run the boy out of them a little bit. You have to have some activities. But then you can get together, and if you circle up and they're down, it limits the amount of movement. They'll still swing their feet. We'll do this a lot and go. You'll hear their toes beat, and it's like, just pretend it's rhythm. But they're inside close enough where they're talking about things and they're listening, and what you've done is limit from here up the activity that they need to actually control. The rest of it's uncontrollable. All right, young teens, 12 to 14, these are in the teenage zone. They're changing. Their bodies are really going out of mind. They are really changing. And this is at the time when the boys change and the girls were winning earlier, and this is when the boys get ahead physically. Their bodies start to metabolize oxygen better. They run faster. They tend to have more endurance. Doesn't mean girls can't beat them up, but it's not as easily. They have a lot of different opportunities in their physiology. It's more opportunity to play. By the way, both fine motor skills are coming into play. So craft work, journaling, that type of thing that was very hard for them to do earlier is perfectly opportunity now. Man, you can get those kids to do journal work. You can get those people to really start spending time in the focused areas. At the same time, it's got to be conceptual. It can't just be facts. They want to know and take control of the information. They want to be able to engage the information. And they're critical thinkers, by the way. So they're going to look at it in a different light. They're going to investigate. Does that make sense? So you just need to know that when you give them information, and they don't ask why like a child did, like why is 2 + 2 is 4, and why is it that you did this and why you did that. Now they're asking it from a critical perspective, and it tends to make staff people, volunteers, parents, and staff people almost defensive. Have y'all ever felt that? Anybody got a teenager that kind of like asks you stuff like, so, and like you're going, But what you're doing is, if you watch yourself, you get yourself, say, okay, wait a minute, I did the same thing. And the fact is, that developmental cycle in their brain, they're literally learning to use the wisdom side. They started that around 6, but man, now they're like cooking that up. And now they're starting to test your mettle to see what's going on. Does that make sense? So what you're doing is, you just got to be prepared to like spend some time with those kids. Suggestion. Doing things with boys will get you a lot better if you're in process with boys. Can I borrow you for a moment? Come this way. This is Gary. Grab a chair. I'll show you 2 learning styles right off the bat. Sit there. Steve. All right, this is a really good learning style from girl to girl. About 18 inches apart, face to face. Eye contact, look at Terry, she can like zip through my brain cells. Now, turn. Let's put our no, bring it back over here. All right, no, put it out. So how you been doing? Are you okay with this?
No.
It drives you crazy,
It's
doesn't it?
awkward.
It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's because this is not a good thing to do with girls. But it's a stinking great thing to do with boys.
Cool.
You see, it's better, boys do better learning styles by doing something with people than to look face to face and eyeball to eyeball. And so the better opportunity us working with guys, especially this age, is for us to do something with them. That's why Ryan is busy about doing stuff with boys all the time and girls. And it's interesting that girls will get together and spend time, really, it's kind of interesting, about 18 inches apart, throw in a little snack and something, and they'll in it. Like, they're awesome. They're like, woo! Boys are like, well, what the fuck? But if you got guys doing stuff, that's why I know that my marketing for this like demolition thing over here, I market like a guy, and it's crazy, and then people always correct me. You'll see corrections all the time. And women can come out too, because I talk like a guy. Like I'm like, go out here and beat a door. I mean, and have fun doing it. I mean, like Paul and I, Paul was in one room, I'm in another room, and after it's over, I felt like Paul and I had a moment. We bonded, you know, like we're going, yeah, it was fun last week, we'll do it again. You know, we were the opposite side of the room with masks and glasses on. The only time we could talk is when we go, wasn't that fun? Hot, ain't it? When it's over, we had a moment. That wouldn't work with girls. So at this particular age, it's nice to really know what we're doing. And that's why these things are important. That's why Laura takes girls out and spends some time with them one-on-one, and they get the chance to look at each other's eyes. Guys, we go crazy with that. If you're going to talk to guys about something important, the good thing to do is, notice I always talk about coming alongside. It comes alongside a kid. A lot of times it's talking with them, not at them. And that's just a little technique. I'll throw that out before we end the day. All right. Companionship. They like to be their herd mentality. Man, they love to be with other kids. They love to be with people. They are gregarious. And it doesn't mean all kids are wanting to be, so you have to have alone time. They're kids, they're learning their stuff. So you've got an introvert kid, too much contact with other people, wears them out. How many of you are introverted? You're going to go home tired after this, aren't you? You're about like, I was in the room with a lot of people. If you were to put Zach in a room by himself for about 20 minutes, and Zach would start to have like, I'm exhausted, I need peace. Isn't that right? I have a friend of mine, I call him a cave dweller. He has to have his cave time, and if he doesn't, and really he was going nuts because he used to have plenty of time by himself and he got married. And then his wife wanted to spend time with him. And he's like, well, gosh, and I go to work and I come home and she's there. And the weird thing is she wants to talk to me for so he got up at 5 o'clock in the morning for his quiet time, promising there's no way. And she got up at 5:15. You want coffee? Then God really made a joke and gave him kids back to back. Bam, bam. And he came to me and he said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm really having trouble adjusting to this married thing. And I finally said, well, you're a cave dweller. You need like by yourself time. And he just started crying. This is a grown man. He goes, yeah, I think you're right. Kids like companionship. That doesn't mean that they have to be around people all the time, but they love to be with people. And by the way, while they're with people, they're in the process of learning. They're learning how to do this social thing with one another. It's very awkward. They're constantly checking themselves with the other person. Am I as tall, as good looking? Does my hair look like that and this one? And why do those people wear it like that and those people don't over there? They're constantly checking to see who they are in relation to other people. It's good for us to give them information as they're going through that test time. We're constantly giving them information to help them with that. So we walk alongside those kids and we say, so what do you think? Instead of telling them what to think, so what do you think? So what do you think about that? So what do you think about that? And so they begin to see the world, and we're helping put lenses on the world for them. So what do you think about that? It was interesting. My daughter was watching, she couldn't watch MTV without me. I know some people, no, never watched MTV. And I was sitting there going, she's going to watch it somewhere. So she has to watch it only with me. So she liked Madonna. Anybody ever heard of Madonna? She liked Madonna. And so I said, oh, good. Well, I'm glad she's got this talented woman, incredibly talented person. She is. And I was like, well, so I said, well, let's watch a couple of Madonna videos. So we did. And she actually watched a video and where Madonna was actually engaging in some inappropriate behavior with an idol in the middle of a sanctuary. So I went over that with her. So guess what she's doing? And went over it with her. And my daughter was horrified. And all of a sudden, it's kind of interesting. All that Madonna stuff just like disappeared. Like when her friends wanted to send her stuff home, she would say, no, I don't want to do that. Isn't that something? She started filling out the stuff on her own. Now it's interesting, she had to come to that decision alongside of, because she could easily, they're always trading stuff. Here, take this and try. I mean, where did you get those shoes? Get them back. You know, girls just, they steal clothes, okay? I mean, it's like they borrow clothes and they never return it. And they swap. Guys never swap clothes. I mean, who would wear somebody else's clothes? But girls do that all the time. Can I wear it? And they go into each other's closets. Sisters do that. It's horrible. Anyway, so they're going to swap life together. When we're engaged in their lives with them, it gives us an opportunity to begin to put a filter on their thinker. So when they're filtering the world, they filter it through Christ. That's our goal, is to walk alongside them in that, because they're going to do it. Conversion is more difficult. And the reason is because they've got more questions, they've got more life experience than the children did. That's why Jesus said, come to the kingdom as a child. These kids start to lose their childlikeness. Unfortunately, it's a loss of innocence in many ways. They're being just absolutely loaded up with bad information. And we have to spend a lot of time in their world and teaching their parents to help put filters around their kids' lives. Jesus said something awfully important about being a part of his kingdom, and he puts it this way. He said, I'm the gate. And my sheep are free to come and go. Then he talks about the wolf. And he said the wolf would have to come over the wall, or a thief would have to jump over the wall to get to him, because he stands at the gate. We have to teach parents to really be gatekeepers. That means watching their internet, guarding that stuff. It doesn't mean that technology is bad, but it can be horrible. So we have to be able to teach parents to be engaged in their kids' lives and gatekeep everywhere. Find out, I'll tell you this, I had teenagers at my house all the time. And sometimes it was so inconvenient. But I did that, and so did Wallace. I laughed because we were talking last night about Brandon and Pearl football. They quit selling eggs and toilet paper at midnight in Pearl, Mississippi, so that they wouldn't gather all that and go destroy people in Brandon, in the Brandon ball game. But then I laughed and said there were many a night that my wife and I were at Kroger getting toilet paper to mess up Wallace's yard. And then we found forks all in ours. So we split the boys and girls up in the youth group. And that's what happened. Wallace took a bunch of the boys and we had a bunch of the girls at our place. So around midnight, my wife would load up the car, go to the Kroger, buy up about 2 cases of toilet paper and damage his yard just while the boys are coming across my yard putting forks in the yard. We were teaching them to play fair.
Hey, you know what I was doing at midnight, though?
Sleeping.
Yes.
Alicia was, yeah, I would sit there and say, y'all need to be careful, and if you get arrested, do not call me. It was our opportunity to play together. We coordinate the events. We already had a wonderful opportunity with each other, so we kept it safe and fun. And the kids, we talked about that. And by the way, when you clean it up, you had to go and clean it up. They cleaned up, we cleaned up. And it was doing things together and playing together. But it's interesting that we really had to begin, even then, the reason that Wallace had a bunch of kids at his house and we had a bunch of kids at our house, and the reason that some of you have a bunch of kids at your house is that you want to have those kids at your house. You know what I mean? You want them at your house because you're a gatekeeper. You want to get to know your kids' friends. You want them to know you. You want to be a safe environment for kids when they have a question that they have somebody they can go to and bounce this stuff off of. By the way, parents are the most influential. Kids, however, at this age start to look at their peers to gauge their normality. But get this, they want to be adults. Isn't that something? And adults have a powerful opportunity to influence kids because kids want a survivor. Get that? These kids want somebody who has been there and done that and lived to tell the story. Isn't that interesting? They look at their peers and ask all kinds of questions, and their peers are giving the same brilliant information that they have. Hey, I'd run away too. Oh, yeah, we're going to run away together. I remember a friend of mine, we're going to go, and why don't we go ahead and just cheat and lie to them, and we can go in the army together. Vietnam was going on. And I was sitting there going, yeah, this is all brilliant. So I went to an adult, and I said, I'm going to run away. I've had all I can take of this. I don't want to be in my family anymore, and I want all this. And the guy goes, man, that's like, where are you going to go? And I said, well, I don't care anywhere but where I live. And he goes, well, you got to have a plan. What's your plan? And so I said, well, I'm going to go to Atlanta. He said, Atlanta? That's the first place they would check. Hey, you're right. So he helped me plan my escape. When it was over, I looked at him and said, this is pretty stupid. He goes, yeah. But a lot of stupid people do a lot of stupid things, don't they? He said, but I never took you for being stupid. I went, well, I'm not stupid. I'll just tell you, Richard, here's my problem. And I just started dumping him. And he said, man, I get it, I get it, I get it. He just listened to me. I get it, I get it. And he never gave me a whole lot. Then all of a sudden he said, you know what? But while you're running away from your parents, you never run to them. Kind of weird. And it sounds to me like what you're going to do is you're going to leave such a trail that they come after you. What does that mean? You know, all of a sudden I'm like, what? He said, what? Instead of inviting them that way, why don't you just go and say, hey, why don't we ever talk together? And here's my brilliant idea. Well, that's their job. And he goes, evidently they're failing at it. And I went, yeah. So he sent me home to rescue my parents from stupidity. Now here's the weird part. I bought it. You see, it's a beautiful opportunity for us as adults to go in it. Thanks for the time. All right. This real quick. Cooperation and independence, both. Older adolescents, they want to cooperate and work together, but they also want their independence. Relationships, opposite sex relationships are hugely important. You're going to have to spend time with the parent helping them understand and wade through the opportunity. A lot of kids are getting into sexual activities in the earlier stages, and especially in this area. Identity development is the number one key that these kids are trying to figure out. Who am I in context of? And when they're looking at spiritual things, they're looking for authenticity, not just facts. They want to make sure that what you're saying is something you believe in and is important and valuable. Does that make sense? All righty.